You know, with the new technology lines that are on the market, like the braided and fusion lines, a lot of fishermen are having a problem connecting a leader to that braided line. And one of the most common questions that I get on our Canadian Sport Fishing website is, what do I use? Do I use a swivel to connect the two? Well, you can, but then you got to be careful when you reel in that the swivel doesn't go into the eye of at the top of the rod. I like to use a knot or different knots. So here's my rule. If I need to use a light braid like I'm holding here, this is the Suffix 832 10-pound test, 4-pound test diameter. And here on my right hand I have the Suffix fluorocarbon, true fluorocarbon material, and it's a 12-pound test, and this is leader material. So it's not like the castable fluorocarbon. It's stiff, it's perfect if you're fishing in clear water around a lot of structures, zebra mussels and so on. So what I would do if I'm tying this thin line, the braid that's got 4-pound monofilament diameter to 12-pound test, I would actually melt the fluorocarbon leader at one end to form a little teardrop, and then I would tie a perfect snell knot. So I'm going to show you the end result because I've been fishing with this for probably weeks. Okay, so here's my heavy leader material on the left, okay, and I have my braided line on the right. Now if you look at it really closely, you'll see that the braided line's got a bit of a flare because I left a tag, but there is really no knot. That little bump that you see is the actual bead from the fluorocarbon. So what I've done is I've wrapped the line, I've done a uni knot, and then I've pulled it snug to where that bead of fluorocarbon is. And because it's larger than the diameter of the fluorocarbon, it can't slip off. So I'm going to demonstrate. This is with light line. Now that little bead is as strong as the main fluorocarbon, so you don't have to worry about it breaking off. Eventually, if you nick the line or nick the fluorocarbon, it could break, especially under a lot of wear and tear. But under normal fishing conditions, it's a really strong connection to use for lighter fluorocarbon to very light braided line. So let me show you with some heavier braid how it works. So what I'm going to do here, this is 80-pound test braided line, and I'm using this as an example because you can see the braid. And even though it's 80-pound test, it's only, see here, 20-pound mono diameter. So it's very thin. Musky fishermen appreciate this line because it's great for musky fishing. So what I'm going to do is, braided line is here. Here I have 80-pound fluorocarbon leader. If I was fishing for big pike and big muskie, this is what I would be using. So this is Suffix 80-pound leader material. So again, it's not castable line. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the tip of the leader material, and I'm going to take my lighter. I've got to hold it close to my body because we got a little bit of wind here. And I'm going to melt the tip just like that so that I get a bead. Can you see that bead that's on there? So there's the actual bead. If it's true good quality fluorocarbon, it won't vaporize when you put a light on it. It'll just burn slowly, melt slowly, and form a bead. If you were to try this with monofilament, it would just disintegrate because it's not heat tolerant. But the fluorocarbon properties, it's so tough that all it does is form a bead, and it's as strong as the main line. So for my demonstration, I'm going to cut a section like I would use to do a leader. So I'm going to take maybe 1.5 feet, and I'm going to use my wire cutters because the fluorocarbon is pretty stiff. Okay? We're going to pretend that this line is coming from my rod. Okay? So watch what I'm going to do here. There's that little tip that I've got. What I'm going to do is I'm going to point the tip that's got the bead on it to my rod tip, up the line. Okay, I'm just doing this so that you know which way to do this loop knot or perfect snell. At the other end that doesn't have the bead, I've got my tag end of braid. So I'm going to make a loop with my braid, just like that. Okay, so that's my tag end where I'm going to tie my swivel or snap swivel. I've made a loop. Now I'm going to take the line and I'm going to wrap it over both tags, but I'm going to cross over to go towards my hand. I'm only going to go about 4 or 5 times, and I'm going to stop. I'm going to hold it there. I'm going to tighten my braid. Okay, and I won't tighten it too much. Okay, but I want you to look at it really closely. That's a perfect snell. Now I'm going to push that perfect snell up to where I've got the teardrop, the bead. See it right there? I'm going to tighten it a little bit more. I'm going to pull it a little bit more snug. Now I'm going to tighten it really hard. I'm going to hold both of them without cutting my hand, okay? And I'm going to trim that with my handy dandy wire cutters, and I'm ready to go fishing. If you were to try to tie a knot with 80-pound fluorocarbon, you would have a wad here, because fluorocarbon is so stiff, especially in 80-pound, that it doesn't collapse. So you see how nice and streamlined that knot is? The more pressure you put on this, let's say you get a 30-pound muskie on, the tighter that knot gets. It's not going to give, okay? So this is a very good way to connect when you have uneven, when I say uneven, heavier fluorocarbon to lighter braided line. You melt the end of the fluorocarbon and use a perfect snell, or what some people call the nail knot, tighten it up, and now at the other end you just put your terminal tackle, whether it's a snap or you tie directly, or a snap swivel so you can change your lures. Now let me show you how you tie lighter fluorocarbon to lighter braided line. So right now I'm going to take 10-pound test, and I'm going to take my spool of fluorocarbon. So what I've got here is my spool of lighter fluorocarbon line material, leader material. It's going to take a section off. And not supposed to use your teeth, but I like to use my teeth because I've been doing it all my life. You should really use snips or wire cutters, but this is light fluorocarbon. You know, I do a lot of steel heading, and sometimes I'll use a monofilament line, like a Suffolk Siege for my main line, and this is how I connect it, but it also works if you want to use a braided line. So I'm going to put that spool down, okay? So no bead, because this is too thin now. But what I'm going to do is to connect a braided line to a fluorocarbon leader that's close in diameter, I'm going to use a blood knot. Now, what's important with the blood knot is that you wrap at least 10 times with the braid. So watch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to go 2 more just for safety, okay? So if you've done a blood knot before, you know that you put the tag ends of the line so they're opposing. You wrap one tag around the main line, put it through the middle. Now for the fluorocarbon, I'm just going to go about 4 times around, because remember, the fluorocarbon has a lot of memory. I'm going to put it back through the center so that they're opposing. Okay, so this is a classic blood knot, but I've got more wraps with the braid. Watch, I'm tightening it. You can see how nice and tight it's getting. I'm going to wet it, tighten it really tight, and I'm going to take my snips. If you have nail clippers, it would work even better. And you can leave a little bit of tag, okay? So that connection is a classic blood knot, but look at how many wraps of the braid we have as opposed to the fluorocarbon. 3 times as many, okay? So these 2 knots for connection are excellent, whether you use a lighter braid to light fluorocarbon, or whether you use the heavy connection with the 80-pound test. You're going to catch a lot of fish.